Welcome, everybody, to an episode of Pixels Politics. I'm your host, Dougie. This is my co-host, Bray. This is episode 6 of Season 3. We have a very special guest, Mickey Macdonald, studying Sustainable Systems Engineering at the University of Calgary. And if you know anything about where that is, today's episode will be about Canada and, the relationship between the U.S., some of the secession talks going on, the rising relationship of China and Canada that's kind of been announced in the past 3 days, and just the native Canadian perspective as to what's going on between the neighbors and what the future might hold here. So, how are you doing? How's the weather there?
Great. Just started getting cold again. I recently just been spending some time out in Western Canada, further west, and just got back to a really warm Chinook. It's kind of a warm burst here, but starting to get a little bit colder. But we're used to it. It's kind of how it is here. We like it. I like it, at least.
Very
Feels like home.
opposite. Very opposite from us.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was a massive geostorm that happened recently, and they said that the northern lights were super visible. Did you catch any of that?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I see the northern lights often. It's like sometimes it's particularly bright, but sometimes I just kind of catch like a little glimmer here and there. And I was actually just up in the Yukon this past summer, and so we were able to see it, real close there. It's one of the perks of dealing with the cold.
Fair enough.
It's one of the trade-offs.
Not of the cold, of the lights.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Big topics is obviously the rising tension here, and just recently, the Greenland situation may or may not have been worked out, which I believe puts Canada in the orange man's crosshairs next.
Yeah. Or attention. That's a more diplomatic.
Attention, of course. But
yes.
Let's start at the beginning of last year when the trade wars, the tariff wars, really kicked off, and Canada was the one he was very strict on. I mean, there was basically very little you guys could do to decrease them. Obviously his parameters were really high.
Yeah. So I'm not a political science expert. I'm an engineering student, but as someone who's been very interested in following as much as I can, I have I think a pretty decent impression of kind of the Canadian opinion on the start of that. It kind of came out of nowhere for I think a lot of us. I mean, not so much like in terms of like out of nowhere in terms of like the kind of Trump's persona and how he presents himself and the strategy that he takes with a lot of different countries. We didn't expect being welcomed with having open arms and flowers and roses out of the gate. But it definitely was still a bit of a surprise. I think the thing that I struggled to understand the most was the fixation over the fentanyl, the fentanyl crisis. It is a crisis. It is, it is an extremely destructive drug. And up here, there's been a number of deaths from it, but proportionally, not anything that has ever kind of that there's been a precedent for, in terms of how that turned into the tariffs and creating that trade war, like as a precedent. It just didn't really seem to make sense. One thing that was not equaling another, and that trend has kind of continued throughout. And so, at the time, I think there was a lot of confusion and a lot of, at least for our own, kind of strategy of how do we move forward with this is, okay, well, if that's the thing, we'll, like Mark Carney, when he was voted in, I think it was in March of that year, that the kind of appeasement strategy was like, okay, well, if you think that's a big problem, we'll treat it like a big problem because this is important to us. but that looking back and with hindsight, that may have been a bit of a wasted effort for how much funding was put towards the border, the border enforcement, and bolstering those things specifically towards that drug. In hindsight, like the kind of dollar to dollars of fentanyl actually displaced didn't really seem to really manifest in the way that it was purported to. That was the justification for those things. So yeah, lots of confusion. And I think looking back on it, kind of like this feels like it wasn't made up, but it felt like it was something that was a very small thing that was taken and then extrapolated and then manufactured into a much larger crisis that then justified kind of more extreme measures like the tariffs, and then that then was able to justify blanket tariffs across across the world and internationally, and then one tiny little incremental step kind of started to balloon and avalanche, and now we're in the space we're in now. So yeah, that's the kind of general vibe from this side of the pond that I and my kind of circle have gathered. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, 100%. I don't think in any way there was any form of appeasement that was going to work. I think he's made it pretty clear that he wants to squish Canada as much as possible, and
yeah, that's the vibe. That's the current vibe that we have. Yeah.
That is the correct vibe that you should be receiving from him. I think. I'd feel safe in saying that it's the one country he's just like.
Yeah.
No matter what, hey, listen, unless you're sending your firstborns and your wives and you're giving us all your oil, I don't care, you're not, there's no change. And I think, I obviously feel bad for, because there's nothing you Canadians can do to change this. It's just, I'm sorry. It is just the facts. It is how he feels, is whatever he wants. That is just what's happening.
Which is that is so confused. That's something that's really, I think, kind of come back to the confusion that we felt a year ago, right? I think that's even more bolstered at this point, that confusion, because it just seems so un-American, right? It seems so like all of the virtues and values and the base structure of what makes America America, of having no rejecting monarchy and going towards a meritocracy and those sorts of things. It seems very bizarre that 300 million people are just kind of being like dragged along by the whims of one very, very old man. And it just seems very counter to a lot of the values that have been at least from this side of the border, that we've been kind of, that we've seen from things like Hollywood, your media outlets, and the kind of values that have been purported and used to justify, things like stepping into other conflicts and injecting American values and those kinds of things. It seems very counterintuitive, because it's kind of like saying one thing and then acting a different way currently, right? Little bits in the past, not so much in the past as well, but at present it seems very much so, like as you say, like it's very much so like, oh, like whatever he wants he gets. And I'm like, well, America's never really worked like one guy gets what he wants, right? Like there has been a little bit more checks and balances, right, with the division of powers and everything. But
from an American perspective, obviously, he won the vote. He won. They voted him in. We voted him in. And it's hard to tell kind of where the voter base is leaning at the moment. Just like conflicting reports everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think from the perspective of those who are still fully behind this one, it's the rhetoric and partial truth for sure that we've been kind of getting ripped off. Now, I don't really know if that's kind of coming from Canada of all the countries, just considering how much
that one feels weird for us for sure.
Yeah. I think again, Canada's probably one of the few countries I feel bad for when it comes to the tariffs. Might be the most actually. But the rhetoric, of course, is that we're getting ripped off. And the big one here that I kind of stand behind a bit myself is
Mhm.
the
Sure.
lack of security. That's the big
Sure.
one he's leaning on now. Now,
Sure.
we've seen them kind of carrot stick in the sense that, like, look, there's drugs. We bomb the drug boats. Look, we know that the drugs are coming from this port. We bomb the port. Look, we know
Mhm.
that the drugs are coming from the president of Venezuela. We take him, right? So we do know that it's very,
Right.
look, here's, here's where this is coming from. The trail of breadcrumbs that
Yeah.
take us to the path we end up on.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, whether or not this is, true, is it
Hmm.
real? Are we actually under
Yeah.
threat? It's
Yeah.
I, it's hard to tell because us as Americans, we're not. It's not like we're in the intelligence circle. You know what I mean? Like the CIA
Sure.
director
Totally.
isn't
Yeah.
up there
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
is like, "Yeah, it's totally
Yeah.
true. The Chinese are sneaking in
Yeah.
over the fucking Canadian northern border,
Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know
That
what I
one
mean."
balloon made the whole difference.
Yeah,
That
right.
one made that one
Exactly.
balloon. That was it. That was the cutoff.
Right.
Everything's changed since then. It's like,
We
well,
we have no idea. We have to.
yeah.
We have to have some form of faith in somebody at some point. So if the president of the United
Totally.
States, who most of us voted for, say, well, the
Yeah.
northern border is a problem, and we have seen, some evidence for it a little bit,
Hmm.
then what are we
Yeah.
to do as a voter base? But again, do
Hmm.
I think it's entirely that?
Yeah.
God, no. He's got a
Yeah.
bone to pick with Canada for sure.
Yeah. There's something there that feels personal.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Like and I think even with Greenland too, there's something there that like feels really personal. Like, I think that one tweet that he put out that was like, I didn't get like that what was there's the
The
one
Nobel
where
Peace.
he was the Nobel people. He's like, I didn't get this from you, so therefore like now I get this, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like that's not how sovereign countries work.
Whether or not
Yeah.
listen, he's joking. Whether or not you think a president should be saying those things or not, totally
Yeah.
on you. But he just says shit like that, and it
Sure.
does what it does to people for sure. I don't personally. I
Totally.
doubt he cares that much, but he just loves to kind of fuck with people.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, he's very unique. He's very unique in that. But nonetheless, like if he is joking like that, he hasn't made that clear. He hasn't made that clear. He hasn't been explicit about that. He hasn't, really given any assurance to any one in or outside of the United States that he is joking, right? That is, not a serious threat. And so, again, based kind of on how he's conducted himself and made very knee-jerk reactions and kind of blanket applied tariffs without any formalized votes from Congress or any kind of process, right? Like what are we to do, right? If someone jokingly says to you any amount of violence, right? Like in any sense, in your personal life, like how are you to take that if it's consistent and there's also precedent for it, right? To believe them at their word, even if they say they're joking, which again he hasn't done and been explicit that is a joke, right? So I find that that I struggle to really kind of take that as as like like he's just being one of the guys, because that's not how the guys act with each other when they're in a professional setting, and especially in a setting that has as much gravitas and as much life and death implications as it does, right?
I wonder what his ultimate frisbee game is like. How far did he toss that newborn to the lake?
Yeah.
Oh my god! You keep running this one every week.
He's tall. He must have a good reach. So.
Oh yeah, he's got to have a good arm, good angle on it.
Yeah. Good wing spread for sure.
100%. I want to see what he's like in fucking the fentanyl land. Like I want to bring my kids to like Lexington Avenue and just have them like shoot paintballs at the fentanyl. Like it's a zombie party. Like, hey kids, we're going down to Lexington Avenue for a zombie party. And we just. I just handed some paintballs and they just like shoot the fucking the fentanyl out guys on the sidewalk that are like crouched over like that.
Yeah.
And then we could just kind of like have like a birthday party on the other side of like the chain link fence. Like, all right, kids, time to stop shooting the zombies. Let's go back to the birthday party, and then he gets to open the gifts.
Yeah.
So we can do that like every year until he's like 13 or 14. Then he grows out of it.
That'd be quite the desensitization tactic for sure. Yeah, is that the new ICE training protocol? Is that
exactly?
Is that how we get like
Canada, we just send them
that's the high school program that
yes.
yeah. That's like the high school like fast track program.
Like, paradrop the fucking fentanyl zombies into the middle of their cities, and people are just gonna be like, they keep popping up. We don't know what to do. They're shitting all over the place.
Yeah, that's what they mean by sanctuary cities. No.
Exactly. Just drop them on Canada.
I saw the funniest video. Whenever I criticize Trump out loud, I'm sure I'll get it this episode. All of a sudden, my algorithms start sending me anti-Trump videos.
Yeah.
They sent me one where I guess he was at like a drive, like a food drive and a material drive for like a hurricane or something. And he walks into the building and there's like toilet paper all over the tables. And he just starts picking it up and throwing it into the crowd like it's a football stadium. And he's clapping and cheering. I started laughing, and I thought it was the funniest thing. I don't know.
Like full AI.
Yeah. Dude, it's just killing me, brother. Oh my god.
That's funny. Like that's very funny.
You've never found a cleaner ass than mine. I have the most toilet paper. Quite bigly so, I might add. The most
Three whole bears. We've
invested in toilet paper coin. It's gonna go right next to Bitcoin. It's gonna go in every steak and shake in the country. It's gonna be glorious.
Yeah. All right. So we have Mark Carney here.
Sure.
Can you, obviously we've got a lot of international viewers. A lot are Americans. Most of them probably don't know who the fuck this guy is. Can you give us the Canadian rundown on Mark Carney?
Totally. So Mark Carney was he's Northwest Territories guy. He was raised in Alberta for much of his life. He was the governor of Bank of Canada for a long time, and he was the one in charge of the Bank of Canada during the housing crisis in 2008. And has been accredited, and this was a really big part of his like running of his like campaign to become prime minister, where was at the time kind of credited with being one of the reasons that Canada was the least impacted in the G7 from the housing crisis, because of a lot of the implementation strategies that he used. And during Brexit in the UK, he moved over to the UK and took a position with the Bank of England. This became the governor of Bank of England, and has also been credited in the UK as being one of the kind of steadfast individuals that has minimized a lot of the damage that Brexit had done to the country in terms leaving that trade deal and navigating the kind of tenuous relationship of that. And so the timing of when he when he engaged in his campaign last year, this is kind of after Trump had been elected. A lot of the rhetoric was coming. The tariffs are being threatened. Trudeau was kind of pathetic about it in the eyes of a lot of Canadians. I personally didn't mind it too much. He took a very relational Trudeau at that time took a very relational hey man, what are you fucking doing? Like, we've been allies. We've built up this alliance as two countries for 80 years, right? 80 plus years. And there's that kind of idea that trust is built is developed with droplets, and it's destroyed with a bucket, right? He's like, Trudeau kind of took that relational approach of like trying to appeal to the kind of sentiment and hey, do we really want to do this? We've been working strong together this whole time, and that as we kind of touched on earlier, that doesn't appeal to Trump. That doesn't appeal to his vanity or his kind of enrichment goals for himself, for his country, if that's what he's actually doing. That's kind of, I don't really see a lot of evidence of enriching the country. I see a lot of self-enrichment from him. But so at the time, when Carney began his campaign, it was very kind of not anti-Trump, but it was very, this is serious and we need to take care of this. I don't want this to be the next Brexit or the next thing that I now have to deal with. I'd rather get ahead of it, get voted in, and then get ahead of that thing so I don't have to clean up another mess, right? That was the kind of attitude, that was kind of the attitude of a lot of the party around him. He came into, like, he personally showed a much less kind of ego than that. The party was very much so like, hey, this is the guy that fixes problems. But he himself was like, hey, I fix problems. They said I'm good at it. I think this is maybe the place for me. He came with a bit more humility, which really appealed to me. I previously had voted, things like NDP. Prior, NDP is the New Democratic Party here in Canada. It's a little bit more left leaning. It's very social program heavy. Very similar, like Zoran Mamdani would fit right in with the NDP, honestly. But I moved over to join the Carney camp because of how he had addressed those previous crises, and the level-headedness that he brought to the table. And I think that the recent speech honestly has given me a lot more faith in it, because throughout, like, his domestic policies, I've been very disappointed by how he's become very, like, economically, like, any project at any means. And being in a lot of Indigenous circles as a Métis person in Alberta, that kind of stresses me out a little bit, because I'm like, oh, okay, for like blanket, like, ignoring a lot of advocacy and a lot of land sovereignty, because there's a lot of land in Canada that is under treaty, and there's hundreds of stipulations across the numbers of treaties that similar to the United States with Indian reserves. I'm not sure exactly. This kind of varies state to state, but I'm not particularly educated on that. But so so Carney, I did vote for him this most recent election. It was because of the tariffs. It was because of the animosity from the United States. I never, honestly, wouldn't have even crossed my mind to otherwise. If under Biden, it was that same kind of boring, like, take it as we go, wouldn't have even thought about it. But it was because of U.S. aggression, and that we kind of went that direction, and I think a large portion of the country as well. When he was running to be as a Liberal MP, the Liberals in the polls were like in the teens in points, and he brought that vote share to, I think he's actually in a majority now, because one of our MPs like crossed the floor. So an MP can actually like switch from one party to another in the middle of their tenure if they believe it's in the best interest of their constituents. So I think that happened with one person. It might have happened with another. I'm not sure. I haven't followed up on it. But he may actually be in a majority now, which a year and a half ago would have been insane, because Canada tend to flip flop between a liberal and a conservative party, kind of flipping between Democrats and Republicans, similar to the United States. But with our multi-party system, we have a minority and majority government kind of situation when the smaller parties get a larger part of the vote. So yeah, I know it's a lot to throw at you guys, but
no,
kind of a real 101 like crash course on how Canadian politics in the past year.
What it sounds like is that we need to invade Canada and enslave them, and then we can just use them for landscaping work instead of the Mexicans, and we can just send the Mexicans back without losing any profit. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, I don't know. The calluses in my hands are not going to make good rose bushes on yours. So just so you know.
No, not you.
I would expect quality. The Mexicans do it much better than
anyone that speaks French or doesn't look like they're actually from Canada. That's who we're going to enslave. Don't worry, you're fine.
So yeah. That's interesting. I wonder who is supposed to like look like they're from Canada. I can't answer that question as a Canadian who's born and raised here.
I don't think the French can either. That's why they're the first to go.
Yeah, good half of us. Yeah, that'd be quite a
honestly,
one or other.
The French. I can live with just the French being enslaved.
I dated a French Canadian chick. She was wonderful.
Lovely.
How'd that turn out? How'd that turn out?
Where you now? Wonderful. She was wonderful.
She was.
Well, I'm single, but she was still wonderful.
Yeah.
So you're saying you're worse?
I hear that.
That's something else, Doug.
What? I missed it.
Said you're worse than the French.
Whatever. I don't care.
Well, you don't want to go with her to Paris? Huh?
Your description there was fantastic. I actually didn't know about his background as like the problem solver, especially through the two crises or major events there. So
yeah, he's kind of a panic janitor almost, like a panic system janitor. Where everyone's like, "Ah, fuck, we messed up. Like, come help." He's just like, "Okay, fine."
You know what's funny is the way you describe him, like this panic janitor, this guy who's like, "Oh my god, the savior to come, the one we need in this moment." A lot of people view Trump very similarly. We had quite a bit of problems economically; it wasn't looking good. Manufacturing's leaving at record rates. Obviously very unhappy with the immigration thing going on. 10 million people. Just the world seemed like it was pretty much headed down some very bad paths. I would say, in general, I'm trying to balance between proper criticism and also defending the guy. But I would say that most Americans are probably satisfied with what's happening in terms of Trump. A lot of Americans, and I'm including myself here, when we see him on the world stage, and he is telling these world leaders to fuck off or whatever, and kind of get some get back, it is slightly inspiring because we've kind of been we listen to a lot of foreigners talk shit about the U.S. constantly. We're supposed to be the police. But we also are very abusive. We're supposed to be, very economically prosper, and everyone wants to come here. But also, we're supposed to be very charitable. The mixed match has been quite a mess, I think, for a lot of Americans to deal with. It's a constant vocal thing from all over the world. Maybe we deserve it. I don't know, but obviously, emotionally, a lot of people see Trump up on stage telling other world leaders, "Hey, we're going to get ours, and you owe us." And I think, confidently that a lot of people can easily a lot of Americans, can get behind that. And I totally understand the foreign response. I get it. Whether it's reactionary upon reactionary upon reactionary of distant presidents and distant events, sure. But I think America's been very reserved, and we're watching it kind of become unleashed, for better or worse, for ourselves or for everybody else. We are watching America do stuff. And I think it's very possible that in itself is, even if it leads to something bad, that in itself is inspiring to people, because again, America's felt like it's been AFK for quite a while. At least again, from my American perspective. Brayden, you said you were sounding like you're about to type in there.
Oh yeah, no, Carney's a CIA asset. Okay, he's gonna run Canada to the ground, so that the way America can move in.
You got a source for that, or is that like a?
That's
has that been cross-referenced? Okay, cool. That's just for vibe checking.
yeah, 100%. Government intuition. And everything I've seen happen in the past few months, I can confidently say it's a CIA asset.
It's an interesting speech to give for a CIA asset. Not gonna lie, it seems a bit.
You see, he's trying to say, like, you can kind of see it in this Twitter post here. It says,
play the video again? I didn't get to hear it.
Yeah, I can play it again. But essentially, he says that he's trying to pivot to China for trade, which is just going to run them into the ground. It's literally just going to run Canada into the ground. And then Trump's just going to come in with this beautiful trade deal, quite big, quite beautiful. And he's going to come in with a trade deal. He's going to be like, "Hey, we'll take your trade." And then, Canada's kind of just going to be tied to America, and they're kind of just going to owe us, and then it's going to get worse. But we'll watch the other clip.
Isn't Canada almost uniquely vulnerable to pressure because of the extent of your trade dependence on the United States?
Well, the proof is that we have been able to withstand the pressure, and there has been considerable pressure.
Can you pause?
I'll give you a couple.
Sorry, can you comment on that in itself? Does it feel like Canadians and Canada in general is doing well? I mean, you guys have had tariffs probably placed the longest of most of the countries now. Like, how does that feel economically? In general, what's the vibe?
Better.
Okay.
Yeah, honestly, genuinely better, easier. Like I have there's multiple apps on the Apple store where you can go, which one of these are Canadian, and go, I'm gonna get that one, and typically cheaper.
Wow. Okay.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, typically, I don't spend any more. I don't spend any more money than I used to, but all the money stays here, which wasn't the case before. People a lot more cognizant of it. I don't one of Carney's biggest things was removing federal barriers between different provinces and be able to trade between them, which has honestly been way harder than one might assume. Like imagine between like state lines, you can kind of just like if you want to like sell a barrel of or like you want to sell a keg of beer, or you want to sell a couple sheets of lumber, you can just kind of send it across the state and like not think too much about it, right? There might be like maybe a form with the IRS to sort out. Here, fucking might as well be exporting it to a whole other country. But that has changed significantly over the past couple of years. I used to work in importing, and like there was a huge thing in Alberta specifically with BC, where we've had a conservative provincial government here for like over 40 years, with one NDP government that was just before this previous government, that was like a 3-year period. And one of the things that they did was like put they effectively tariffed BC wine, because there was protests around a pipeline going through, and it was one of the NDP's like Hail Marys to get the more conservative leaning folks on their side to stop fighting them along everything. That a lot of that has kind of disappeared. A lot of that like province to province animosity has kind of vanished over the past couple of years, and so there's a lot more lateral trade from coast to coast. Whereas before it was much easier because a lot of the structures that had been built in place over the 80-year alliance over the 80+ year alliance or building alliance that Canada and US have shared, has built a lot of what's it called? Top to bottom. Yeah, not laterals.
Oh, yeah,
right
I know conglomerate is the horizontal one. I always forget the vertical one. I know what you're talking about, but
yeah, there's been a lot of trade corridors that have opened up like north to south, but not so much east to west. And so in the past year, since Carney has come in, a huge amount of effort has been placed into building systems and pipelines. And like when I say pipelines, I mean like kind of abstract pipelines, like work pipelines, not physical pipelines, to make that trade easier, to make it more lucrative. And I think that's that is. At face value, it's like, oh, that's Canada kind of building like an internal isolationist economy. But when you pair that with his strategy of working with China and developing a strong relationship there, and then working with Europe and a strong relationship there, and the fact that the Canadian rail goes from coast to coast, literally from water to water, in a straight line laterally through most major cities in Canada, what I see is a Panama Canal alternative. I see a northern hemisphere alternative to the Panama Canal, and whatever chaos is going in Venezuela, and that if in his speech, it is, if that's true, that international law does not mean anything, and that piracy can be on the rise because you can't rely on the global policeman that may have been the United States, and may have been China in the western, in the eastern, UTM map that we've kind of gotten used to, right? If that's the case, then having having reliable, safe trade routes that you can depend on. Northern Hemisphere with Canada and China and Europe having a very symbiotic and amicable relationship makes that a much more appealing transportation route than south, right? And so I think that's those kinds of ideas are what is kind of really fueling a lot of that drive. And I think as he mentions here, we'll be fine. That's the thing that makes us fine.
There's
enough.
also sorry. There's also so much irony in the fact. Well, let me say, he's doing the smart thing for his country, right? The U.S. does want to trade. Naturally, trade with Europe
Just
and
who
China.
does?
It's the
Who
easiest
does?
solution.
Yeah.
Exactly, easiest solution. I'm sure he could think of and immediately implement it. There's irony in the sense that the U.S. was like, "Hey, we need to strengthen our northern security by I don't know what he's trying again what the drive from Canada there is to do, like whether or not he really wants to annex the whole thing. Maybe a similar deal like Greenland where we get pieces of Iron Dome in place. I don't know what the overall eventual goal is, but either way, the U.S. cuts you guys off, and it's under the guise now of defending itself against China and Russia, and in doing so, somewhat invited China right up into our northern border, right? Or at least a lot of influence from China. Yeah. And we'll go into a little later. We're going to mention the car thing, but yeah. So again, both sides. Canada, you're making the right choice here, very clearly. I don't see why you wouldn't.
Well, this is all intentional, Doug. It's all intentional.
Oh, yeah,
Mark Carney is intentionally.
Yeah, tell me.
He's deciding to set up trade with Europe and China, knowing full well that Trump is going to gain control of Greenland and restrict the international waters in that area from commencing any trade with Canada. Mark Carney knows this because he's a CIA asset. And so he's going to drive the country's trade into the ground, which is going to force a bad deal on their part with America, which eventually is going to lead to us just taking over trade with Canada.
Damn. I almost want you to be right, not from any
it's quite a prediction.
Not any
it's quite a prediction.
Maleficent.
Malicious. Yes.
Malicious thank
intent.
you. Malicious intent.
Yeah.
But just out of pure, that would be the greatest prediction of all time. That's an Alex Jones 9/11 fucking call right there.
That's a pretty bingo. It's a pretty crazy bingo call for sure.
He does look like one. Now that you're saying it, I'm getting the vibe. I don't know why.
Oh, you're vibe checking.
Yeah, I'm vibe checking. And he's kind of does look like one. All right, let's continue.
Yeah.
The facts, we've actually created more jobs since the tariffs were put on than the United States in absolute number. Economy is growing at the second fastest rate within the G7. That's not there. There are pockets of extreme pressure without question in Canada, but headline, we're reacting. The second thing, and it's a fundamental point, is the recognition that we can give ourselves far more than any foreign country can take away. There's lots of efficiencies in having one Canadian market, the $1 trillion of domestic investment, and building these partnerships abroad, all of which are bigger returns than what's been lost. That's not to say we would rather not lose it, but we can withstand the pressure, and we are.
And I was interested that you said basically the old world's not coming back. So you're not seeing this as a period where you just have to get through and normalcy will return.
I think that is our view, and we regret it, but we're not going to sit around and mourn it. We're acting, and we're acting in a way both that's in our interests, but we believe in a way with others that's building imperfectly in steps a new system. I'll give you one example on handback, which is we are members of trade agreements that comprise already 1.4 billion people around the world. So we have the most extensive network. We are trying with others to bring some of those networks together. The most prominent example is the Trans-Pacific Partnership in the EU, acting as a bridge. It's not a direct benefit for Canada, but it is a benefit for Canada that these groups come together. Ngozi is here, consistent with the WTO rules, both of which are. And in that way, we're building back out amongst willing partners.
So I'll say this. I watched a lot of political speeches from politicians from around the globe. He's not an idiot. That's just the easiest one. He's definitely not dumb. He speaks very well. Yeah. He's very down to earth, common sense. I did kind of use it because we co-opted it here.
The CIA really knows how to hire people.
The CIA really knows how to hire people. But he generally comes off as a, whether he's an asset or what, but he comes off as very smart and understands the situation well. So,
yeah, 100%. Canadian military simulates potential U.S. invasion with American forces overpowering land and sea defenses within days.
Yeah, so this happened very quickly after the
Mhm.
Greenland thing kicked off, and you had mentioned earlier
Yeah.
the vibe of Canadians kind of being
Yeah.
scared of the rhetoric, or at least nervous about it. Which,
Mhm.
yeah, I said this about Greenland. I went on a little rant last episode. I think you guys should be. I think people should be
Mhm.
scared, whether or not it's right or wrong.
Mhm.
I think Trump is the guy that would totally have a CIA asset, set you guys up, so that if he needed to block the trade from Greenland, it's a very strong possibility. Invasion, I don't know. It's a little out there for sure.
Supposedly they've already secured a deal, unknown
Yeah.
amount of money for certain mineral mining rights and other trade assets there, but it's looking like we're going to be getting control of Greenland, if not militarily and physically, then at the very minimum we're going to be controlling a lot of trade there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was announced by the NATO
that-
secretary.
Was that this afternoon? Like this afternoon? I haven't actually
was
seen any posts about this.
yesterday, I believe. I believe it was yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that I'll
Yeah.
give you the quick, 1-2. So,
Sure.
NATO Secretary General Mark, I think his name is Mark, whatever.
Another Mark CIS.
He announced, and so did Trump, that they had come to the start of a framework for Greenland, in the sense that we were going to get mineral rights, land access for military bases, and some veto rights on some things. And then Denmark Prime Minister came out and said, no, that's not a thing. And that was shortly after. And as of today's date, the 22nd of January, again, the way these things go, it's hard to tell. I will say Trump does seem to kind of get what he wants. So I'm more inclined to believe that there is talk of infrastructure going on for whatever reason. But again, we'll see. Who knows? World events, fucking flip a coin, throw a die, throw a dart. Who knows what happens next?
Yeah, and like that kind of always confused me because like the U.S. has had pretty much carte blanche to build whatever bases they wanted to there anyway. Like there's so much money of the U.S. Army in Greenland already, and has been for a long time since World War II, right? When the U.S. Had management of Greenland for a brief period of time until the war ended, and then was relinquished back to Denmark. And so that it just and which kind of brings to the forefront, like, what was all this fear for?
Well,
right? If there was already all these assets, what was all this fear for? What was the intention of this?
I've got two guesses, and one of them actually goes with what Braden said. One of them, he's made quite, he's mentioned it well enough. It's the trade route that China and Russia use along Greenland's coast. Obviously, the U.S. can't just be like, okay, that's not allowed, you shouldn't be doing that, without looking like a dick. And so I think that's playing a large role, probably the larger role. However,
and so they look like a dick by trying to just annex the countries flat out. That's like that seems like the lesser of the two evils of those two decisions, does it not?
It's the,
like, in terms of incentive, right?
Yeah, it's the decision of, do we want to look like an economic dick, or do we want to look like a military dick? And the U.S. has less of a fear of looking, terrible military-wise than it does economically. Economically, we could mess up the whole system if we just ran around and were like, okay, China, you're not trading here. And not that we're not doing that. We are doing that. Don't get me wrong. That's been a part of a lot of the things. However, most people aren't paying as much attention to that, right?
Yeah, Iran would like
Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba, there. I'm sure.
Yeah, Venezuela, Cuba, Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, Cuba, yeah.
It starts to look a lot worse if we go, okay, Greenlanders, you aren't doing trade with China and Russia, with our enemies. That's a no-no. Sure. I mean, you're not even going to... From now on, we're actually going to hang off your coast, and we're just going to stop all the trade boats coming by. Like that's not... That sounds way worse, well, I assume, to most, than we just want to build some military bases on your land. We just want to mine some minerals. One sounds way more productive than the other one to Americans too, right? Americans need to feel like they're getting something out of it.
Yeah, which again, my kind of earlier point, right? Like that was already the case, right? When you had an alliance, when we built up, this alliance was built up almost over a century, right? Like those were already on the table. There's nothing in the way of those things, which again makes the kind of this rhetoric, this violent rhetoric, make even less sense when that's already on the table. Right, it's like having friends with benefits and being like, "Oh, I want more sex," even when you're having sex every night. It's kind of like, well, like, why are you then threatening to beat up like their other friends when you're already getting the thing that you want? You already have the thing you want. Like, what more is there to gain? Like, what more can you get?
It's the same with Canada. It's the exact same thing. We aren't getting what we want technically, but it's the prefaces of. It doesn't matter if it's a lie or not. It's it's irrelevant because most people aren't going to fact check it, like you or me or him. Like it's not, it's not going to happen. No,
we kind of actively are in the process of fact checking and digging into that, right?
But the average person who's listening, who snaps on Fox News real quick, is just going to be like, well, hey, if that's what he says is happening, that's what he says is happening. Right. And that's the majority of the population. Sure.
Here's the problem. So once Carney does his job as a CIA asset, right? Trade goes downhill in Canada, right? Trump controls Greenland, but he hasn't made it like a United States like ground yet. Right. Russia's just gonna launch their fucking Tsar Bomba on Greenland. They're just gonna nuke Greenland. That's gonna be the start of World War III, and then after that. But the thing is, it's not gonna be enough for people to like launch their nukes in response. Like the United States isn't gonna launch their nuke in response. They're just gonna call NATO up, and then there's gonna be a whole shit piece going on about it, but no one's actually. It's going to start a war, but there's not going to be any more nukes after that. So Greenland's just literally going to be destroyed. Like Greenland's literally in like the hellfire zone. I would not want to live in Greenland right now. However, I would like to have a Greenland driver's license. So if that doesn't happen, that would be pretty sick to have. Have a Greenland driver's license with like little maybe like.
I also want to move to Greenland and get the Greenland driver's license. So
exactly.
No, I think in general it's about the naval traffic there, and in order to fully secure it, the U.S. needs to
I don't know. If I was Putin, I would be nuking that shit like immediately. If I can't have it,
it's a good thing you're not then. It's a good thing you're not then, in that case, for the Greenlanders at least.
I mean, the thing is, Greenland's like it's Denmark's territory, right? Like, what is Denmark gonna fucking do? Oh no, Denmark's tiny little wimpy nukes.
It's so funny. You again, American perspective, right? It's so perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
And like it or hate it, again, that's just. I've said this last episode, but I'll say it again. Most Americans are kind of for this. Again, you agree or not. They just don't care. Like most of the world, we see ourselves. I was about this earlier. We see ourselves as being one versus everyone else, and partially we have been treated that way a little bit, and it's only amplified that feeling. And now it's like if Trump can, we can wake up tomorrow, and Trump can say we kidnapped the Prime Minister of Greenland, and I guarantee you, most Americans would not give a flying fuck. They wouldn't care. They would not care at all. We don't care. We don't want to be a part. We just got taken out of the WHO. Americans like that shit. We don't want to be a part of this, Yeah,
it's like I feel like that's a bit of a poor characterization of that you were taken out of the WHO, as if
we removed ourselves. Sorry.
Yeah, no, like that, like that's saying like, oh, like I dumped her, she was a bitch, and but like realistically, you were arrested for domestic abuse, right? Like those are two very different situations. So just to like, kind of get on the same page and like kind of be more real about like what the circumstance is. Like you weren't kicked out,
I didn't mean to phrase it that way. We left. What I'm saying is that's the American vibe, is that we don't want to be. Listen, I think they ran some poll in America that was like over 50% of us don't even want to be a part of the UN. Like we just don't care about the global order, the world order.
Which is hilarious, since the UN, like the headquarters is in the US is in New York, right?
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah,
it's just a general vibe.
UN's gay. Fuck the UN.
See, there you go.
That's okay.
So it's awkward talking again. As an American, we hear about the Greenland thing. That's just the general sensation for Americans, and then obviously that shakes a lot of the rest of the world. As as people who are on the other side of it, I totally get it. It's a weird feeling to have, where I'm just like, It's like I'm watching a football team, and although my team is winning, every time we win, our crowd just starts slaughtering the other crowd. You know what I mean? It's like I'm winning the football game, but also, wow,
I think
killed those guys.
Yeah.
I think we need to nuke Greenland before Russia does.
What would be the goal of that? I'm trying to sort out.
You're thinking
the
2 steps
incentive.
ahead, right? Like you're America, right? You're going to take over the
Do
trade
it.
routes, but
Right.
you know Russia's probably going to just nuke it. So you nuke it before they can. And you get a one up on them because they don't get to launch the nuke. And Putin's like sad because he doesn't get to launch it. He's like, shit, I thought I was gonna.
Right,
Well,
it's-
I was gonna do that, you know. And then you
Right,
kind of just feel like
yeah.
you're Trump and you throw another baby into the lake, and then you just think about your zodiac sign for a little bit. Like, what's the next plan? You know.
Yeah, I love when I love when hundreds of thousands of people die because somebody doesn't want to feel bad
Exactly.
about like not getting it, about not being first in line. Oh,
Well, I mean,
shucks.
obviously, you give them like a little pamphlet, a leaflet warning with like 24-hour.
No, you could give him a Nobel Peace Prize that doesn't have his name on it. Then
I mean, he's already
that
gotten
tracks.
something higher than the Peace Prize. He's gotten the Silver Torah. He's got the Silver Torah. He's duping it up over there.
The what? What is
Silver
this?
Torah.
Yeah, Silver Torah?
You know what the Silver Torah is?
Oh no.
I can explain it. Wait, why did my mouse sensitivity?
Never heard of this.
It's real exciting.
the
Don't
CIA.
worry.
The Silver
Try
Torah.
to use code words because it's just getting us shadow banned on platforms every time we talk about these things.
Gosh,
On
On
what
July
is
10,
this?
2023, President
Silver
Donald Trump
Torah
was
crown.
presented with a Silver Torah crown by the Israeli Heritage Foundation.
Oh, by the
Israel
Heritage
Club.
Foundation. Okay, yeah.
Yep. It's known as the Crown
Okay,
of
so-
Jerusalem.
Okay, so what I'm reading is a man was given a fancy thing by a organization that he's heavily involved in his own club that he owns. Does no part of that read as like the most does no part of that read as sad? There's no
Not
part
if
of
it's
that
Israel. If it's Israel, it's the best thing since sliced bread.
Is it?
I like it, to be honest with you, only because it tells you everything you need to know about, whose fingers are in the jar. So
Listen, I love Israel. Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me.
I'm personally not a huge fan of what they're doing at the moment, but
which part, in
That's-
general or specific? Not that this is gonna get us any more,
Shadow.
Totally,
bans already there, but sure,
Yeah.
fuck it, why not?
yeah, I mean, like, I'm personally not a fan of, a significantly technologically more advanced government that is actively funding the carpet bombing and leveling of an adjacent, significantly poor nation to a point where the government no longer exists, and then countries then have to debate whether or not the government exists in the first place, right? Like, I think there's a lot of problems with that. There's a lot. I think there's a lot of challenges there that kind of extend beyond the kind of sensationalization or the use and weaponization of previous tragedies to weaponize like race and nationalism misinterpretations to then say, oh, anything against this is anti-Semitic, and then using a prior tragedy on the world stage to then co-opt that and say
you're
anything that we
articulating
do is
this real
justified. Yeah, anything that we do is justified. Like, that becomes really problematic when carpet bombing places, right? When places are flattened, and then especially then when the individual who's supporting them then treats that so flaccidly and turns that into a real estate deal of, we can just redevelop this, like as if it's like a landlord that's just putting some white paint over a light switch without even removing it first, and being like, oh, landlord special, now it's pretty and nice now, and like there's nothing is broken here at all, right? And then
do the Trump impression border piece.
Well, he was trying to build a hotel. To be fair, there was a lot of Hamas in the hospitals. A lot of Hamas going on there. They had to cover the hospital.
That really loses its meaning, though. You know what I mean? When that organization, becomes so disjointed and so like spread out, that like there's no longer any kind of real dialogue that can happen, right? And then anything that happens from that point, which is months ago now, that to continue to unleash the destruction that Israel has is, it seems a bit unconscionable to me. So that's kind of, I think Canada like officially holds that statement to a certain degree. Obviously, I've been much more kind of concrete about, like, I've been much more explicit about that.
You're a brave man.
Canada, like officially, like Carney has spoken, that Hamas needs to be removed in order for Palestine to be fully recognized. But Canada does recognize Palestine alongside France and other European countries, along with others in the UN. Yes, exactly, and yes, but ultimately, though, like ultimately, I don't really care if the governments are recognized. What I care more about is the blanket bombing. What I care more about is the disenfranchisement, the displacement of entire groups. As somebody who's Métis in Canada, we've experienced that twice in Canada's history of being fully displaced and then losing an entire generation's worth of wealth, and then being framed as the villains, being framed as being written into history books as the villains. Right, for example, like Louis Riel, he's known today as the father of Manitoba, one of the provinces in Canada. Right, was labeled as a madman and a religious zealot in our social textbooks until very recently, and many of them still actually hold that opinion. Right, like that kind of disenfranchisement, displacement, and then rewriting as the villains. Right, when that was not the case in the first place. That kind of, like, I see the same thing happen. I see Israel currently perpetrating that in the same ways that other colonist systems have engaged in our history. And so I can't sit by and I can't stand here and say, oh yeah, like, I don't want to piss off Israel. Fuck Israel in that sense. Like, in that sense, right?
Wow,
there's nothing to do. That has nothing to do, like, and like, this has nothing to do with Israelites. This has to do with the government and the current war that's ongoing, right? Like, because, in the same way that, like, currently, as a, like, in kind of a Canadian perspective, is we're kind of being like, hey, you know what, dude, should we trade with China or America? We should probably trade with China, right? There's a bit of a fuck America in that sentiment, but I'm also sitting in this conversation with you guys because you are not that, right? You are not a part of that, right? Like, as Americans, you are not responsible directly for the opinions and decisions that Trump is engaged in, right? In the same way that Israel as a government is currently engaging in its tactics with Palestine, right?
I think you might change your tune once you go to the newest Trump hotel in Israel. You know what I mean? Yeah, we just, the Hamas hospitals, they got to get rebuilt somehow. We just put like a hotel there, like a public swimming pool area over there. I think you might.
And who owns that?
Well, you see, it's owned by the board of. It's owned by the Board of Peace, just created as of like yesterday or something, and there's a whole list of countries, but it's like, of course, the U.S. and Israel, and I believe Russia's on there actually.
Right. So the three countries that are currently engaged in wars of aggression.
Board of Peace.
It's the Board of Peace is currently engaged with the three countries on the planet right now that are engaged in wars of aggression that they started within the past 5 years.
Yeah. Board of Peace.
You gotta
does that sound like peace?
It's gonna be a big, beautiful hotel. We're gonna place it right in the middle of the.
Does that sound like peace?
Sounds like a money
they didn't want to live there anymore
scheme.
Because of Hamas. Hamas was doing so much. Much dastardly
I agree
deeds.
with you. I agree with you. It does sound like a money laundering scheme. Like they're like that's the kind of conspiracy shit where it's like maybe there is something like that going on. But like ultimately, I don't really think like again, ultimately, I think the key things to keep in mind when discussing these things is what is happening on the ground, what is happening to actual people, what's happening to their lives, like not getting into like the civilization gameplay of like, oh, if I put in some religious, sprinkle a little discord in there, then what happens? But
exactly.
Yeah, so I wanted to jump back to the rhetoric part, the violent rhetoric, because we've seen this habit of Trump saying something that'll happen, and then on the world stage, a lot of people kind of laugh and giggle and don't think it's real, and then he says it again, and they start to get a little nervous, and they say, they try to tell their citizens in the world, it's not like that. And Trump makes it very clear that it is like that, and then we kind of watch it happen live, and then we watch the world kind of shiver a little bit. All right, we saw it with Venezuela. Greenland was actually taking the invasion threat so seriously, they warned their citizens to prepare for an invasion. That's how serious it was. The prime minister told them, you guys should prepare. And yeah, so when we say we're threatening an invasion on Canada, what's the genuine sentiment like? Is that, where are we at? Are we in the giggling stage? Or in the laughing stage? Or in the prep for invasion stage? Where are we at?
I mean, there's clearly prep already happening. What you brought up earlier, what you brought up earlier, models being run. That prep is already underway, publicly. That's that's not being like, oh, like me and my buddies, we're putting together some orange juice and fucking baking soda napalm bombs or whatever, as engineering students, right? Which I'm not writing that shit out. I'm just kidding. But clearly there is official organizations that are taking that seriously. I think the sentiment is by most Canadians is ignored. Okay. In the same way that you don't care if the US nukes Greenland, you go, whatever, that's fine. We got it. Now we're more secure, right? Yeah. Regardless that 50,000 people have just been erased from the planet.
It'll probably be Russia first. Right? It'll probably be Russia, but it might be US. It might be, but it could also be Russia first.
Either. It doesn't really matter which one it is, to be honest. Both are bad. Both do it. Either doing it would be bad is what I mean. Not both are both are bad, but either doing that would be shitty. Yeah. At the same time, well, then no one's the bad guy, right? No one's the bad guy. Yeah. If that's the whole thing of a firing line, right? Is that then no one is the guy who killed them, so then no one actually killed them.
You would get together okay, guys, a mistake was made. Let's not do it again. Come on, US. Come on,
Guterres, Antonio Guterres. I hate that guy so much. Again, I've been on some anti-UN rants, but it's just anytime there's a world event, the Secretary General, I think he's also called that, of the UN, he comes out, he's like, guys, can you please just stop it? That's a no-no. It's
that's not cool, guys. Nuking Greenland, not cool. How could you both do it?
That's effed up.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, what's that new Pope's name? I literally just saw a video this afternoon where he did the exact same thing. Yeah, he did the exact same.
Leo, yeah, that's
he's a Chicago guy, right? Boston.
Hey, he's from here in the US, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's into gay guys or something.
Hey, he's Catholic. I'm just kidding.
I mean, yeah. So it makes sense, right?
I'm playing with that. I don't know about that. I haven't heard any of that. I haven't heard any of that rhetoric. But I'm sorry.
We were talking about the rhetoric vibe and the general civilization. You were saying that some organizations were preparing, but the general civilization or civilian vibe is.
Yeah. I think most are doing the same thing that Americans doing, where they are, trying to sort out the fact that in Canada, one of the bigger problems is that we have a lot of monopolies that control a lot of industries, a lot of base necessity industries, right? So agriculture, food distribution, housing, things of that nature, telecom, electricity, those kinds of things. And so the cost of living with those things have kind of blown out of proportion. I think, one of the reasons I'm studying what I'm studying in sustainable systems engineering, and I'm looking to take a minor in architecture is to kind of address housing in a more sustainable and long-term way that is kind of more beneficial for everyone. But currently with a lot of monopolies and stuff, so most Canadians are kind of more focused on that, unfortunately. Yeah, but in terms of the relationship with the U.S., I feel like most that I've spoken to, we'll get into the secession stuff, I'm sure, in a minute here, but that's kind of uniquely to Alberta. But the kind of greater Canada is definitely on the like. I remember I saw a poll last year. It was last year. It wasn't like August. I think that I read this poll, but it was something like half of respondees said they'd be willing to fight, quarter said they'd be willing to die, kind of thing. And those kinds of things, I'm sure if you did that poll in America, it'd be much higher.
Oh yeah.
Because what I gather just from the campers, what I gather from America is y'all are violent as fuck.
Yeah, you're not
y'all
wrong.
are just ready to throw hands
Yeah.
for nothing, for no reason, and which is kind of crazy to us. Like we value life over kind of more other things. And I think we just have a general kind of more cooperative. If we work together, we get more things, and we are better off than if we are constantly fighting, because that's just that's just not a fun way to live when you're constantly fighting all the time.
I mean, I don't know. I think the Vietnam vets, they had a great time. Like they came back, like they were super happy.
That's what I've gathered. Yeah. The last couple Oscar winners definitely gave me that impression.
Yes, exactly. Like, and you guys could just become like the 51st state. You don't even have to fight us. Just become the 51st state. Your currency becomes our currency, and
I don't see that.
This goes uphill from that. You get Steak and Shake and Bitcoin. You can use Bitcoin to buy your burgers at Steak and Shake. Beef tallow,
Beef tallow, yeah.
Tallow. To quote Carney, I don't think that's on the table. Hasn't been discussed.
It's a shame he's a CIA asset. He's lying through his teeth.
Yeah, you keep saying that with a lot of certainty, but
if it came true, how blown would your mind be, though, if that were true?
If that were true.
Yeah, like 5 years from now or 10 or whatever, comes out Mark Carney is a fucking
it's less than 2 years.
Spy.
If that genuinely were true, which it's not, I'm gonna put that to bed. I would probably refugee somewhere. I would probably end up. I'd be going somewhere. I'd be going to Japan.
Probably not Greenland
or Europe. Actually, I wouldn't actually mind going to Lebanon or something. To be honest, I think that'd be really cool. I have some family out there, so.
Well, unfortunately, that's next on the chopping block after they get rid of Hamas.
Yeah.
Well, according
there's
to
a lot of Hamas in Lebanon too.
Yeah, according to Trump, everything is on the chopping block. So that doesn't really leave a lot. This doesn't really leave a lot to go.
I mean, they were playing Free Bird and with AC-130s in Venezuela, just shooting whatever they wanted. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty awesome.
I'm telling you, general sentiment for Americans is this. This is what it is. Better or worse. You can throw a gun into every American's hand and say that Canada has actually been scheming this whole time to come kill our children, and we wouldn't even flinch. We'd all fucking flock. Like it's just crazy. The culture, American culture, is a very interesting one. I'll just say that much.
Yeah, I wonder.
The damn issue was.
Yeah, I hope you aren't. I hope you aren't insulted by this, but I wonder, because you say that you say it sounds like you say that with a lot of pride.
Yeah.
But do you not feel like that's maybe like just a very manipulable thing? Like, do you not feel like as do you feel like that's not like a naivety or like a being easily manipulated into go shoot that way, and you just kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, I'll go do that, and ask no questions about whether or not that's actually the thing that is beneficial to you?
Well, I mean,
see, the thing is, I don't like. I feel empathy for the people that die. Obviously, I obviously want to say this shit. I'm just being satirical. I don't actually mean it, right? But it's the thing is, it's out of my control, right? So the only thing I can really do is joke about it and make hard renditions towards it, rather than actually address the issue. Because addressing the issue is kind of fucking depressing. Because there's a bunch of fucking people that are dying, and it's I can say a bunch of people are dying and just make the mood go down, or I can say how awesome it is to fly in an AC-130 and blow up, Hugo Chavez's, fucking mausoleum, Yeah.
So do you think that the mood is more important than the lives then?
No, not at all. The lives are definitely more important. But
Right, so then why would we
context
prioritize one or the other in that case, though?
I don't think the thing is I can prioritize the lives. I can be like,
Sure.
hey, these people are dying. This is an important issue. Everyone should look at this as not being emotionally adjacent to it, right?
Right,
but
right.
rather just look at it as sort of like, hey, this is a terrible tragedy. But the good news is, despite not having any control of it, you can make dark humor jokes about it, right? I don't know.
Yeah,
that's just that's my perspective. It may not be the the morally correct perspective, but it is my perspective. Though I do have empathy for the people that are suffering right now. 100%.
No, I'm not trying to like disparage like having dark jokes to kind of cope with it, but I just feel like there's a very different kind of like energy to like a dark joke and then being like, oh, like we're actually gonna like completely only focus on this as like this is actually awesome and this is better for everyone. I'm like, well, that's just kind of, those are kind of two opposite directions as opposed to like.
No, I'm sure like going to like those parts of the world that
it's a gorgeous cat, by the way.
Yeah, I use it as a mustache sometimes. So
Love
it. But no, it's like
love it.
And certain areas of like the United States that has like invaded, it's kind of like I don't know. Like I feel like if I went there, I'd be like super depressed, and I'd feel like really bad for the people. So it's just easier for me to cope with it just by making dark humor jokes about everything.
There are countries the U.S. has invaded in the past, freed, and celebrate us like no other.
Some
they love us.
Actually, okay. So name one. Name one in the past.
Yeah,
2
Morocco.
Decades. I don't know about Morocco, Doug.
We freed Morocco during World War II, and I
think Morocco drug issues are still like a problem, though, aren't they?
Drug issues in Africa is not that's super common.
Morocco
or towards the Middle East too.
Yeah, the English contributed heavily to Morocco being freed. I'm not sure you can really attribute that entirely to the U.S.
General sentiment, from what I've heard, is that they love America.
Loving America is not it's not like that's not like that doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with being fully liberated exclusively by America, right? Like the allies across the board. Yes,
sure, but like I can't I can't hop into the brain.
But they also love Canada, right?
Well, I'm sure they do.
Moroccans also love Canada, so like that's kind of.
But there are, I mean, dude, there's a couple countries in the Middle East that are actually gracious about American intervention. I'm pretty sure the fucking Prince of Saudi Arabia loves it. The guy's rich as all hell from it. Jordan is a country.
Yeah, the guy. I don't know. The guy, like the guy, not necessarily like necessarily the population at large. So like it is, to kind of like take one person and go, oh yeah, no, that defines the entire thing. It's a bit.
Well, then you're asking for the impossible a little bit. I don't know if there are any polls in every country that says, do you love America or not? But general sentiment from what I've seen is there are quite a few countries that are grateful America exists. Actually, I can take very quick anecdotal evidence from the immigrants, the first and second generation immigrants that I know who come from those countries: Vietnam, Philippines, Bangladesh, a lot from South America, Brazil, who are grateful for what America just does in general. And I'm not saying it's we're perfect and that we aren't destroying some countries, but if we're tearing some countries to pieces, the opposite must also be true, in which that we have brought prosperity and I don't want to say peace because it's a little cringe, but in truth, the world has had less military activity, at least until now. There hasn't been a major conflict between two big powers in an extremely long time. A lot of that has been credited to the U.S., but again, I don't know what percentage we can credit it.
Yeah, I wonder like how much of that is fact, how much of that is just by how much of that is just adjacency, right? Like how much of that is believed because of the adjacency that the three of us have in this room here versus because I'm sure like the other two superpowers on the planet that are superpowers also claim a significant portion of the fact that we haven't tried to fuck up the U.S. and so therefore we're the ones who are actually keeping the linchpin in this very delicate Jenga tower.
Well, that argument is coming to life
peace.
a little bit, right? We're seeing China kind of step into those shoes a bit. Russia's saying they're both on the line of the old American-run world order is dead. There's a new multipolar, bipolar world order. Start to see it. We'll see what happens. Maybe we'll see the world kind of split into different, more heavily influenced by more than one big country, and we see how they prosper, in different ways. I don't know. Maybe we'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll all die in nuclear war. I have no idea. But there are maybe not the entire country itself, but there are tons of countries outside the U.S. that are grateful to this country.
Well, I mean, we need to define grateful too, Doug, because we killed like hundreds of thousands of innocent Japanese people just to prove a point. And then now Japan loves us and we control a lot of their territory.
I think you're only backing my argument, like even more so, in the sense that even if we bomb the shit out of an enemy, even they will love us.
Well, through force. I don't know, it's kind of more like Stockholm syndrome than like genuine love.
Maybe. The Japanese it's a harder tell because I would say their government and their actual populace fractured in opinion after World War II. You both have frozen for me. I don't know. Hopefully it's not my internet. Okay.
Yeah, lost a little bit there. Hey, back there.
Yeah, sorry guys. The Japanese, the civilian population and the government in terms of sentiment kind of split a bit where, they believe that they're being ruled by a literal god. And all of a sudden, that entire belief system was torn from them, and they kind of view their government as being American patsy. So again, it's hard to speak on behalf of an entire populace, but from what I gather, there are quite a decent amount of civilians in these countries, even ones that we've bombed to are, the tune has changed. It's not like, Vietnam, even the Vietnamese, even Vietnam has been pushing for closer ties with the U.S. They're very vocal about it, mostly in defense because of what China's doing. But I'm not saying the U.S. is innocent. I'm not saying we're not hated. There's obviously a lot of hatred towards the U.S. I do find it funny. A lot of it comes from citizens in the Western world now. But
I was find I love that you bring up Vietnam as an example of kind of one that's really kind of come around to the U.S. and I find it really interesting the kind of assertion that like Carney is a CIA asset when like that the CIA having a significant hand in propaganda in Vietnam during and before the Vietnam War, right? In terms of anti-communist propaganda and shifting the kind of the population's rhetoric over that time frame, right? And openly, and well documented now at this point, right? The impact that the CIA has had, effectively having plants. Officials planted individuals to create a public sentiment against communism and pro-capitalism that has had, generational impacts, from Vietnamese folks who have, who married soldiers and came here, came to the U.S. came to this continent, came to America. And even those locally who stayed and still maintained a lot of that pro-capitalism propaganda that had just kind of manifested and kind of evolved into just a pro-America propaganda as opposed to just the kind of the economic system. And so, I wonder, is that kind of one of those things that's natural, or is it that CIA plant that you were talking about earlier, but there's kind of a lot more evidence and documentation of that versus just kind of like seeing a dude being like, he kind of like, he looks like that guy in the fucking Hollywood movie. Yeah, that guy's it. You know what I mean? Like there's two kind of levels of evidence that we can kind of draw from to kind of go, maybe that's why that's the case. Maybe it's not kind of inherent to it.
He said this before, actually. Brayden, go ahead. You talked about an entire country, the ease of propagandizing an entire country with absolute. Do you remember? You've already said this before.
Ease of propagandizing an entire country with absolute? Which country?
I can't remember which one. I think you were just saying it was possible.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's definitely possible. Look at Mexico. U.S. controls Mexico right now.
Elaborate?
I mean, Scheinbaum is works with the United States government. I mean, it's pretty standard.
I think I'm understanding what you're putting down. You're in this boat of we keep putting these assets in charge of these countries so that they make choices that go against American interests, so then we can
create an excuse to take it over. There you go. We create the enemy, then we create the problem, sell the solution. Mm-hmm. That's how it works.
This guy plays Crusader Kings, I can tell.
Yeah.
Love that game.
It's fun.
Yeah. So anyway, what was the last point? Like, I'm not sure how much time do we have on the show, by the way?
Let's try and cover the last. Well, we have infinite amount of time, but let's just try and get through the next two. I do want to talk about the secession rumors and kind of rhetoric. Can you start pulling up some of those videos? So we have, I guess it was a polling or like a voting thing as to whether or not was Alberta.
Yeah, Edmonton's independence petition
Alberta's
goes on and on. Thousands in line. The crowd keeps building.
So this is where is that?
Why is it so cold there? Jesus, it looks like they're on a lake.
Yeah, it's just Edmonton. No, that's kind of how it is. That's how it is outside right now.
You just walk on ice everywhere.
Yeah, pretty much.
Jeez.
Yeah. We like all of our cars are very dirty because we end up having to like salt the roads so that the ice melts and then creates this kind of like slush, and so there's just a lot of dust thrown in the air when it's really cold. So all of our cars are like dirty as fuck.
Wow.
Yeah, it's one thing. It's one thing you'll notice if you like ever come here in the winter and like it's a clear day. You'll notice all the cars are super dirty.
Wow.
So I want to stop someone from invading my house. I can just like spray Vaseline around my yard or something. They'll just slip. They won't be able to get access to the front door.
I mean, you'll probably slip more than an invader ever would, but yeah.
But I'll be inside, right? So I'll be okay.
True. If you're inside all the time, then yes, that would be.
And then I can just get like a wooden board or something, put it over it, and just walk across the board.
I remember when I was I lived in North Saskatchewan when I was like as a child because I was born in North Saskatchewan, and we boarded the windows because it would be minus 50 Celsius.
That's crazy. So, how does anything operate in that temperature?
Not well.
Like your electricity still works and stuff?
Yeah, electricity works, just not particularly efficiently. And you use insulation. There's a number of different there's a number of strategies you can do. That's why engineering is such a common and that's why it's a very common profession up here, because we have to deal with very specific issues. But yeah, so commentary on this independence petition. So this was in Edmonton. There was a couple lineups. There was a few thousand people that went to go to the petition. There's another petition that went on relatively a bit earlier. This was last year around end of October. Like 22nd to 28th to maybe early November. That's called the Forever Canada petition. 500,000 people, just under 500,000 people signed that petition. That was in every city and across Alberta. This was pretty much just in Edmonton, to my knowledge. They need to have, I think, 128,000 signatures in order for the petition to go to the government to do anything with, really. The way the Forever Canada petition was worded, I don't think there's any real legal mechanism for Alberta to secede. So this, I don't really know what this is really gonna do. Yeah,
there's no legal way for a province to secede.
There is.
Supposed to kill like the mayor or something.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's one way to do it, which we try to avoid. But so I think it was like in the 80s and 90s, there was a really strong secession movement
Why?
in Quebec.
Why?
Why? Well, because there's a number of regions. The different language, different culture. Argument was a different culture, and different legal system to a degree. There's a number of other kind of the way that like certain cities operate, as like Montreal is a borough system similar to like to New York, which the vast majority of the population is in Montreal and Quebec City, with kind of small spattering throughout the rest of it. And so a lot of the opinion around secession would kind of came from those two places. And there was also a terrorist group in Canada, French Canadian terrorist group that killed a number of people with car bombs and that kind of thing. And
what are the French are crazy. Sorry,
it's the Irish did it too. Like it's not just the French. Like let's be super clear here. But so there's a lot. So there's a lot of systemic differences between the way Quebec ran and the way the rest of Canada ran under the kind of more English Commonwealth structures and systems. That has a long history in terms of like going back to like when New France was developed up into the Treaty of Paris, I think it was, where the French effectively relinquished control of New France to England, which then coincided with like the Hudson's Bay Company, the Northwest Company, which were fur trading companies that owned much of the Northwest Territories, which is actually Manitoba, much of Ontario, and then like the Hudson's Bay, the southern portion of it. So there's a big long history of that, but effectively you have a lot of French kind of colonists, but kind of like we see them a little differently here because like when the English came in and brought in a lot of English common law, that then was the kind of de facto standard for Manitoba onwards, and that's not even getting into like the resistances from the Métis and the Cree and the Blackfoot of the time. But all that to say, Quebec had different legal systems. They had a lot of different legal structures, and so there's a lot of things that made secession make sense, because having to translate those systems in a like ongoing legal system and an ongoing parliament, having to reconcile the differences is challenging. It is hard. So like the secession makes sense in those circumstances. The only thing that Alberta has really different between the rest of the country, legal system, legally, courts, politically, the way we deal with healthcare, all of those things are the exact same, effectively, as BC, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. You'll find minute differences like this, like one medication might be covered, one a driver, a speeding ticket might be provincial, might be something else. Doesn't like you might find little many differences, but ultimately the actual structures are all the same. They're all based on the English Commonwealth system, because after England took over New France and then spread out through the rest of the country that is now Canada, all of those systems came along with it. Alberta has the same systems as most of the country outside of Quebec. If Quebec's secession didn't work, there's no way I see an Albertan one working, because the culture is the same, the legal systems are the same, all of those structures are all of the same, right? So there's no benefit, there's no incentive to really differentiate from that. The only things that are out there are straw man things, like they are very limp things. Like there's like a lot of Albertans that are pro-secession will throw out things like the equalization payments, which is a payment structure. It's effectively it's like state insurance that the state pays to the government and then is then distributed out to the states that need it the most. But in our case, provinces, right? Typically, that because Alberta has a very low population and we have a fuck ton of oil, or at least have had a lot of oil, and we've invested a lot of money into oil, we have a very high dollar per capita. Yeah, I know. Yeah, the American got excited. Right? Can we when you do the edit, can you just like throw in like a fucking eagle across my head?
I'm
Just,
sure
like,
it'll do it
just-
automatically.
I'll get the AI to do it.
yeah. So like, and like in the oil that we've developed and like the ways that we've developed is very similar to Venezuela, which is why, you know, when Venezuela was invaded by the U.S. and then you've taken control of the infrastructure that is there and how the oil is developed, that makes Albertans very anxious because, oh, now our only client has disappeared, right? And which, you know, also fuels, you know, like, okay, if now America is taking care of their own stuff because they've just assumed control of Venezuela and are now just stealing the oil from that place, then we can't sell it to them because they can make it for themselves cheaper. So now we have to find new ways to sell it. So Albertans have kind of freaked out from that. I think genuinely that like the invasion of Venezuela, it will cut our secession talks in half. Because like a lot of the benefit of seceding and joining the U.S. for those who want that, which is a very, very small proportion, in the single digits, I think would be generous, probably less than that, of those who would kind of really follow through with it. I've seen polls that are as much as like 30% on like the kind of on like smaller, very right wing kind of media outlets, and I've seen very dramatic 90% want to stay on left wing outlets, but the general consensus it's like a pretty solid like 60 to 70 are like vehemently against it. Like I said, like the petition that I signed, the Forever Canada petition, had 500,000 signatures. We only have 4.5 million people, and so 500,000. So that's a pretty significant proportion to go out of their way to go sign a random petition.
Yeah.
Within a province. So there's really not that much there. And that's not even getting into I think that you and I might have had a conversation about this around like the treaty system.
Mm-hmm.
So the First Nations groups within Canada, especially in Western Canada, signed treaties with the federal government many years ago, which created a strong basis for the Indian Act, and has dictated a lot of the ways in which Indigenous folks have interacted with the rest of Canada and have been able to, or have failed to, really kind of integrate and to develop and build wealth and that kind of thing. Alberta is the only province in Canada that resides entirely on land that is under treaty, right? So Ontario, much of the land there is not under treaty. It is just taken over by France/England, and they don't have a treaty. They took the land, and people were displaced, right? But in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Northwest Territories, Yukon, BC, Manitoba, some of Ontario, some of Quebec, even there are treaties that the First Nations groups of the land of that area have signed with the federal government, right? That's the agreement they have with the federal government. So that means the federal government has effectively, that in that treaty they agreed to effectively defend First Nations people of that land, give them education, give them healthcare, give them XYZ things, and in return they get to use that land. Right. And if they do not do those things, then they are in breach of that treaty. Right. And so if Alberta secedes, the provincial government secedes and says we are not longer part of Canada, the government of Canada they are bound by that treaty, by that alliance, to invade newly seceded Alberta and say, nope, we have legal obligation to the First Nations people of this land to protect their land from those who would take it through illegitimate means, which the Albertan government would be doing. Gotcha. So Alberta is unique in that. It's one of the only provinces that actually is fully made up comprised of treaty land, and that's not even getting into like the federal land, the crown land that is owned, that is in pockets with like our national parks and those kinds of things that have to be navigated. Sure, then there's the whole thing of seceding as a landlocked country with no water access, and being surrounded by two very aggressive allies, or two very aggressive countries that want their oil. That just I don't see any way that it sounds positive.
I know where this is about to go.
Yeah.
What it sounds like is that the propaganda machine started by the NSA is affecting Alberta, and when Alberta secedes, instead of Canada taking over Alberta, the U.S. is just going to swoop in, take over Alberta, and then push propaganda that they've improved Alberta's economy by injecting it with the United States, serums, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, this is my personal opinion. This is not. I don't think this is indicative of the majority of Canada. Well, maybe I think much of outside of Canada, in Alberta, maybe not as much. But I genuinely do like our premier Daniel Smith has gone on Fox News often.
Yeah.
When when you've been making the joke like Carney's a fucking CIA plant. Genuinely, if he was and Daniel Smith wasn't, I would be fucking shocked because. I would be shocked. That would actually break my brain because the incentives don't line up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The incentives that Daniel Smith has to really cozy up to the U.S. have made sense. They've made sense. They've been consistent with her persona, with her values, with the things that she wants and advocates for within the province. So those make sense. Those make sense to me. I can see the parallels. I can see those things align. Right. Yeah. So, there is I've noticed there's a lot of PSYOP shit going on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bots going on in Alberta subreddits about secession.
Nancy Mace.
I think this lineup is kind of one of the results of that. Which if I'm being totally honest, we were saying we were talking about what's the Canadian opinion towards the US. For those who are seeing that PSYOP stuff and going seeing the bots talking about secession and me going, oh, someone actively wants me to do to believe in this.
Yes.
That makes me so much more fervent against it.
Yeah. I can't. I said the same thing recently. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So, I feel like there's, for every secessionist, there is an equal, if not greater, pressure that is more kind of pro nationalist, pro Canadian, staying within Canada and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I hope that kind of gives you some context for secession and for how our systems work. It could. That does sound like. That sounds like CIA playbook is sowing division, divide and conquer. That's
I don't know. There's been so many times where I was just like,
basic Sun Tzu shit.
There's no way this guy is CIA, and then it's like, oh, he was CIA. All right, but the next guy totally isn't CIA, and it's like, oh, he's CIA too. And the same thing with Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, Andrew Tate. It's like, oh, come on, they put him in jail. Oh, he got out of jail because he's CIA. God damn it, it's every time. You know what I mean? I don't know. I feel like I get tricked by it so many times. I have to assume, otherwise I'm gonna look the fool in a couple months. You know what I mean?
We're almost done.
Yep.
Last topic.
Yeah.
And I think it'll probably be one of the larger contention points or one of the most interesting
Sure.
when it comes to America, Canada, and China. But like we said earlier, ironically, U.S. pushing Canada for, quote, security has pushed Canada closer to China. And one of those concepts or, events is the selling of Chinese EVs in the Canadian market. And this is, I've kind of been waiting to talk about this one, funny enough, just because the EV market in America is kind of small. I didn't know you were saying that it's similar in Canada, right? You were saying that you guys don't actually have that much EV competition there.
Not that there's not that much. Yeah. You said there's there's Nissan Leaf, there's the Prius. Most all of them you'll see here is going to be hybrids. A big reason, I think, a really strong contributing factor to that is because we are our climate's not great. It's cold as shit, but it's not even just cold. If it's just cold, that's one thing because you can develop systems that can offset that, but it's it's specifically in the prairies, and places like Montreal and Toronto, it's the diurnal range, right? It's not that it's cold; it's that it's really really cold and it's really really hot, right? It's that we'll I've seen in a week a 65-degree swing Celsius.
Wow.
Right, 65 Celsius degree swing.
That's crazy.
Right, from I've seen it go from -40 to 30 degrees Celsius in a single week. Right,
Jesus.
batteries hate that.
Yeah, they do.
Like full 100% EVs hate that. That is something that has to like people here, like, even though like realistically it's not going to make that big of a difference across the lifetime of an EV, yes, right, but over the course of like the next 10 years, when you're likely going to be using it before you sell it and buy the next thing, if somebody's buying a $70,000-$80,000 EV, they likely are in the tax bracket to do that, right?
Yeah.
Like, but the thing that like gets in the way of that is the fear, right? It's and then that's very easy to emotionally push that button, right? Of like, oh, that's the standard range, so therefore this is a bad thing, and you have to be gas. You have to be gas. You have to be gas. The only thing that can do long range is gas. The only thing that can do long range is gas. But which is why, you know, hybrids have been much more successful here, because it satiates that fear. Right,
Yeah.
satiates that anxiety around distance and around the temperature and around efficiency and that kind of stuff. That like up here is just so much more front of mind, right? It's so much more front of mind, right? Especially, you know, again, I was up in the Yukon, and like there's like I saw one EV the entire time I was there, right? And that's because that guy worked on the electrical grid in the Yukon, one of the few people to actually do that, and so he had like a full map of like where he physically put chargers,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
And so
Pretty cool.
yeah, which is super sick, and like, you know, he's leading that charge, but like you know, but like, you know, because up there, you know,
yeah.
I mean, not necessarily, again, the battery, like if it's like what you don't want with the battery is rapid fluctuations, right? So
Yeah.
Calgary kind of sucks for that, right? But also at the end of the day, it's not going to make or break the vehicle realistically, especially in the ways that most people use their vehicles, which is ultimately under 20 kilometers a day, right? And they're going to and from a charger every single day because the charger's at their house, right? So like, you know, all of those kinds of stresses and anxieties are realistically like very readily and easily solved, right? But that is hard to disperse to the masses, and so yeah, so again, ultimately that just has kind of manifested in hybrids being very popular here, right? Because it dispels the anxiety, giving people peace of mind, while also kind of moving the direction of, you know, being more, you know, focusing on renewables or allowing renewables to power their vehicles, reducing the pressure of financial pressure for themselves for fueling and all of those sorts of things. But
Yeah, well, Chinese EVs. This is a pretty popular. I'm China obviously pushes this quite a bit. Their EV cars being, you know, the best, the greatest, and it's
Quite
obviously
possibly.
they're not sold here in America, and it's going to be probably
'Cause-
50-50 for most people. But
Yeah.
the spying options, and we've got some evidence for some further stuff. I know Doug Ford here, he specifically mentions the ability to spy on Canadian civilians through their cars in another clip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Where is that?
Yeah.
Where is
Yeah,
that in this clip or?
No, but Braden,
Let's-
can you
let's
pull
look
up
at-
the clip of Doug Ford?
Is this one?
No,
Here?
it's not this one. It's this one I sent you. This is one of him saying that, you know, they
This
should
one?
boycott the cars. We've seen. No, not that one. Sorry. Maybe I'll go find it. Hold on.
I don't think you sent me anything on
Hold on.
this one, maybe?
Nope.
No. Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
I got it. Hold on. The first thing I pull up is well, I'm pulling up articles. Where is Doug Ford saying that they do?
I mean, it makes sense the guy with the last name Ford is against Chinese cars. What do I know?
To the surprise of no one.
Nope.
Yeah, Ford is an interesting cat.
My cat's more interesting, though.
I must agree. Yeah.
Well, shit, I can't find the video of him saying it. Maybe I dreamt it up.
Yeah, I'll just take you for your word on it. I mean, everyone's spying on someone at this point, you know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of a given, but it's one of the reasons they, you know, of course, say they're not sold here in America. I know in the EU, there's a heavy push to get more Chinese EVs in.
Mhm.
Man, I wish I could find the video.
I wouldn't mind trading my personal security in exchange for a Huawei Pura phone. The nice little flip foldable phone.
So I'll say this.
What about you?
I was going to say this for Tuesday. We'll go over it more on Tuesday, our next episode. But they are currently trying to pass a law in the U.S. that gives the government the ability to turn off a car. Any car made after like 2030 will be designed that it can be remotely turned off.
The kill switch.
With a kill switch. Right. So the idea that a Chinese car can spy is really not that crazy. And I'll find it, but I'm can't find it at the moment, so it's kind of unlucky.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, Doug. At first, I was a little bit, discouraged, disparaged about the cyberpunk psychopath disturbia future we're entering. But I'm actually starting to get kind of used to it. I don't know. I'm kind of I don't know. I'm starting to like it. Yeah, like the aesthetic, It's like it's all about the aesthetic now, I wouldn't, so what? They have a bunch of surveillance cameras on every, lamp post on my street, Yeah. And that's the aesthetic, though. That's what we're doing, right? It's like steampunk or cyberpunk or whatever, right?
So this is him. This is him noting him previously saying it. For some reason, I can't find the one of him actually saying the original line.
They won't be allowed to go to the U.S. Cybersecurity. I call it the spy car that they're bringing in, and they won't be allowed to get over there. And it's going to tick off the Americans. 80% of our autos are going down there. I believe that speaking to the auto sector, speaking to the supply chain as well, they were coming up with a collaborative agreement. But now throw China in here for what? They aren't going to manufacture here. So it's just a terrible, terrible, miscalculated decision by the Prime Minister.
So without going...
when was that? What was the date that he...
I believe this is very recent.
January 2nd.
Okay, so it's super recent. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is all recent. I don't really want to get into the economics of it because that's a whole conversation in itself.
Whole kind of worms, yeah.
Yeah, but obviously they're not sold in here to the U.S. because of quote spying. And I'm curious, as a Canadian, you're going to be the first on the Western Hemisphere, first country that is allowing such cars in the first place. Is that a fear for you guys at all, or you in general, or fuck it, you're with Braden, it's all dystopian anyway. Who cares? Which one's spying?
At least get into the aesthetic, right? I don't know.
They do look nice. So I'll go first, and I'll say this. A long time ago, American cars, which are still kind of on the lower end globally when it comes to popularity, were much worse. They were actually terrible. And one of the fixes that the U.S. came up with was actually to allow the Japanese to sell their cars here. And if you're an American, obviously the Japanese cars sold really well. And they still top the charts in the U.S. to this day. And it actually, because of the competition, it forced American car manufacturers to really step up their game. Again, with EVs, Elon broke that market, and it has now forced other car manufacturers to enter the EV market, which, of course, is driving competition. Arguably, China, who has been in the EV market for quite a while and may or may not have some good cars, it's always up for debate. I always see back and forth. Could also possibly, because of competition, increase quality of cars. So I mean, this one is like I'm fucking split for this because the spying thing I think is a genuine fear. However, I would love to see our car market again, face the competition that it needs to drive it even more forward. At least as an American, that's the American, in me. Yeah,
I agree with you. I agree with you on pretty much all of that. I think the competition aspect is great. Personally, not speaking for Canadian, just personally, I'm fairly anti-car. I've heard people be like, "Oh, don't say you're anti-car, say you're pro-transit." I'm like, no, I'm anti-car. The way that the way that vehicles in North America have been developed to be larger and larger and larger. And it's effectively become an arms race to make a bigger and bigger car that is more and more dangerous and more lethal. I've been hit by a car.
Oh, wow.
Gotta say, not fun.
Well, that's something
Not
I
fun.
like about Europe. In Europe, when like the cars you see over there, like for example in America, you have a lot of SUVs, minivans, and stuff where like the wheels are here and then like the body is like here. So when you hit someone, it doesn't just fucking hit them; it like runs over them. Whereas in like Europe, the wheels and the body of the car are like almost one and together. So when you hit someone, you're just hitting their legs. So you might break their legs, but they aren't going to die necessarily, depending on what your speed you're going at, obviously. And also,
because they'll end up on the hood and not.
I like the really nice low hanging Volvos they have over there.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some of my favorite looking cars.
Yeah. Exactly. Like I've done research studies for courses on cars and the prevalent and like in how the trend in American specifically manufacturers where grille height has increased, that has shown and proven no economic or efficiency benefit, but has the only correlation to the grille height has been in profit margin. And the marketing has gone along with it, as well as there's I can't remember. There's one manufacturing law in the U.S. that has it's the way that like light trucks are taxed that has effectively like made it so much more profitable. What defines a light truck has made it so much more profitable for manufacturers to like push towards SUVs and light trucks versus things like the K trucks. But
that has no. I just want to. Sorry, I'm jumping in. That law just got removed, so we will see.
Great, cool.
Yeah, we will see those tiny little Toyota trucks here in the U.S. I'm pretty excited for it. That's the only reason.
I do like the K trucks too.
I love K trucks. I want a K truck so bad. They're so sick. I'd love to be able to move a couch with like a bicycle-sized thing. That sounds so sick.
We should start seeing them here soon in the U.S. Sorry, in Canada.
I've seen one in my area.
Yeah. And like those trends will take decades to really fully actualize, especially for how many vehicles are already on the road. In terms of going back, just kind of going back to the topic that you wanted to get into with like EVs and Chinese EVs in particular, the price that I saw in the past week of these 50,000 units that would be allowed into the country were priced at like something like $33,000 or $35,000 Canadian, which would be 25,000, I think, maybe 22,000.
I think it's like 15 to 20. Let me double check.
Yeah.
So
that was actually something I wanted to talk about in terms of like Americans getting the raw end of a deal, just in terms of like the conversion rate.
Yeah, you're right. 25.
Yeah, 25. Cool. Yeah. See, I got it.
Yeah, you get
doing that. So anyway, the 30 to 35,000, that kind of thing. 2 years ago, the average price of a brand new vehicle was $66,000 Canadian dollars. So these new vehicles are half the average price. As a poor person,
hard to beat. That's hard.
That's fucking sick. Right? Yeah. Being able to just afford a vehicle, let alone an EV that will be significantly cheaper over the long term, has a very direct impact to my daily life if that's something I choose to pursue. Right? Yeah. The transatlantic pipeline that was made, the Keystone pipeline that was all in the news for you guys as well as us.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That was like the only thing people cared about. That was going to make this whole thing. It made fucking no impact.
Yeah.
Everything got more expensive after that. Everything got worse after that. They didn't become better; it became worse, except for a small amount of people who were involved in that specific industry, right? Along, small proportionate amount of people that are involved in the industry. But something like this, an option that is that cheap, that is that available to the poorest population, will make a legitimate and long-standing impact. Where as you were mentioning, right, like by Tesla showing that EVs could be viable to large manufacturers, they then joined in, right? When I guarantee you, these 50,000 will sell out this year.
100%.
Guarantee. If they're not already pre-sold.
Yeah.
I guarantee you they'll be sold immediately, and every single manufacturer will follow suit. What I would prefer, and this is kind of the thing that Doug Ford was talking about, I'd prefer to see a Canadian manufacturer. Like there's one manufacturer that has been kind of like up in the air. I think it's called Aero, based off of like there's a Canadian fighter plane that was called the Aero. way back. And so it's one of the kind of Canadians' military like claims to fame, or historical claims to fame. Really rad fighter plane. But there's an electric car company that has been kind of proposed, that is, has a prototype and all that kind of thing, and has been kind of up in the air, but it hasn't shown up, right? So I would love to see that. I would prefer to see that show up rather than having a different country's stock just kind of transferred overseas. Like, as a sustainable systems engineer, it pains me to see vehicles that could be used in their own hometown effectively instead put onto a bunch of ships that then use a bunch of heavy crude oil to then be transferred for months and months and months over, just so that some other dickhead gets to use it for another year, or whatever, or saves $2,000 on their fucking financing or something like that. That pains me a little bit from a compliance scientist perspective. But as a poor person perspective of I would, as someone who's been homeless before, who's someone who's lost a vehicle because he hasn't been able to afford it, who's someone who currently I have 3 motorcycles. One of them is actually a Chinese electric motorcycle.
Oh wow.
Nice.
It's brilliant. I love it. I also have a BMW. I also have a Toyota, one of the old, oh god, I'm gonna blank on the name now. One of the gold, I have an 83 Goldwing, 97 BMW. Love them both. But the Chinese EV 2024 Commando, I take that to school every day in the summer.
Wow.
And it's free. It's free, and I can go on a freeway.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I spent easily double on my BMW than I spend on this, because I don't spend anything. Overall, from the purchase, the insurance, everything, I spend double on the old 25-year-old BMW gasoline vehicle than this Chinese EV. It has plastic coatings and is cheap in that sense, but functionally I love it, and it's really fun. You just zip around. I've thrown every person that's kind of in front of me onto it because it's super easy to ride, and honestly way safer than my BMW. But it can reach the top speeds, and it can get me to school and do all of those things. Check all of those boxes, and it's cheap, and that is a
China. Cheap, yep.
No. But the cheap part is the best part of it, right? The one thing I don't like about what Doug Ford is saying in the previous clip, not this one, but the one that was loaded up, is he repeats cheap Chinese vehicles over and over and over again, and it's said with the disdain, right? It's said with we don't want that cheap thing, and I'm like, no, please bring the cheap thing over here, because people, like I said earlier, a lot of Canadians are just dealing with food profiteering. They're dealing with housing, they're having to compete with multinational investment development companies that are buying single family homes. It's the proportion of single family homes that are owned by companies is larger than it ever has been in Canada, right? That's what they're having to compete with. And so something like this, a cheap Chinese vehicle, is what's going to make those kinds of things will make a much bigger impact on everyday Canadians' lives. So I'm stoked about that stuff. I think Carney's doing a great thing in that way. I see a lot of the things that Doug was talking about. Factories, no one's really making those things here, so I don't know what factories are closing. I'm sure there's some that will be impacted. I don't know which ones. Because again, we don't develop those. Or if we develop them, then if we made them in house, I would be like, yeah, why would we do that? We had to make it in house.
Well,
but we don't.
I think his argument is that if competition enters your guys' market, fully, not just the 50,000, then, and if they lose, Canadian manufacturers, lose, they buy up the Chinese cars, then obviously those factories close, which we've seen happen. But again, from American very pro-capitalism standpoint, competition is almost always good. And it's kind of driven the car market to what it is today. Now, again, with the Chinese spying thing, the thing is, and I'll say this, I don't want to get crazy into economics just because we could go on forever.
Yeah.
You can't, the market can't be what it is, like you said. People don't give a fuck if the car can transform into a robot and then commit war crimes if it's $10,000 cheaper than the next best option.
Exactly.
People aren't going to care. They want to fucking buy the cheapest option. They don't care if it's listening to their phone calls. They don't care. In the end, most of the spying at the moment takes place against government officials. And, you know, obviously that's not good. But, you know, when there's a car that's $10,000 cheaper and it's by far the only thing someone can afford.
$30,000 cheaper. It's
Sorry,
half the price.
$30,000 cheaper. You know, you just can't
Yeah.
make that argument. Like, you know, Doug Ford, I'm sorry, I'm not a citizen of yours, but your argument needs to be, oh, wow, you know, Canadians are so fucked they can't buy a $60,000 car. We should be in some way trying to make domestic cars cheaper. Not the argument that, like, okay, well, let's just continuously fuck them over.
Yeah, they might spy on you, maybe, and it might impact you. Maybe, who knows? It's just like that's a limp argument. Yeah,
no one's caring. No one is going to care. And Americans are facing the same sentiment now, where it's like, okay, well, we just want to buy Chinese shit because it's far cheaper, and we don't care if it's spying us anymore. We already know you're spying on us. We already know fucking the Foreign Intelligence Agency is spying on us. It's just not an argument you can make anymore.
Yeah, there's no such thing as foreign intelligence agencies.
Sorry.
Yeah,
but
no such thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Only CIA. CIA is everywhere. Only the CIA.
Exactly.
We're here about a new world order. It's always been the same old order. It's the CIA world order.
Yeah, don't translate the back of the U.S. $1 bill from Latin into English.
I'm curious to see where this goes because again, the Japanese car market being allowed into Western markets, it really changed cars forever. It changed cars forever. It changed all of them, and now we're seeing the K trucks. I didn't even know that's what they were called. Come to our market.
Yeah.
Again, I think that'll change things forever. I think that is also directly correlated to this. They needed to do that because if Chinese cars are entering our backyard and they're that much cheaper, there needs to be a competitive alternative. And so, you know, all of a sudden being like, oh yeah, sure, the Japanese can sell their trucks, the little, you know, Korean and Japanese can sell the little trucks here too. It's the exact same thing. So we'll see a lot more different, you know, car brands get introduced to the West here. It'll be interesting, but I think that's everything. Unless there's something specific you wanted to chat about or make any more notes, comments, jokes.
I mean, the only thing I was thinking about is, like we were talking about, you know, you're asking, or rather, you're mentioning that, you know, that there's a kind of like a sentiment of that, you know, Americans have kind of been feeling like they've been shortchanged by the rest of the world, right? That they were getting the raw end of the deal. They were giving more than they were getting. And, you know, something that, you know, I'd always kind of thought about, I thought of like, cause I remember I cannot remember the year. I think it was it might've been like just post like when Mark Carney was the Bank of Canada governor, the Canadian dollar was worth more than the American dollar for the first time like ever, right? It was like by like 4 or 5 cents, maybe up to like 10 cents higher. I'm not sure. Do you remember this?
No, yeah, there's been more than one time where the Canadian dollar was worth more than the US dollar. Yeah.
And I think it might have been maybe like 2013 or 14. I was in art school at the time. But I remember specifically like the only thing I saw on the news was like it was shown as if it was like chaos, and within like a week there was an entry tax for Canadians that were going to like Ross Dress for Less across the border, buying stuff and then coming across the border. And I remember distinctly there was a tax that negated the benefit of the difference in currency exchange. And so every time I've heard, and so since that time, this is well over 10 years ago. Since that time, every time I hear the sentiment of, oh, we as Americans are not getting back as much as we get, I'm like, but what about that time the deal was slightly, like barely in our favor that you've been doing here and have a tradition in doing here of coming over the border, buying things cheaper, and then going back home for my entire lived history, and honestly, my parents' lived history. And then the one time I see it get 10 cents over, you claw it back across the border. I was like, wait a minute, that seems inconsistent. Like that seems like that feels like, it's really like how, like, it's like you're claiming that, it's almost like claiming this victimhood while at every corner there's like something to the deal that's always in the end, that's always in favor of the US. From a Canadian's perspective, that's like as a Canadian how I felt at that moment. I'm like no matter what happens, we'll always get the shittiest end of the deal, because the one time we can like get a little bit more valuable currency, there has to be some tax, some bringing products over the border tax. And that was before trade war stuff. That was like when Obama was still president, right?
Yeah.
Like that was when Obama, which like most Canadians were like, yeah, he's sick, like. Yeah, he'd fit in over here. He's kind of conservative for us, but like he'd fit in over here,
sure.
Right? Like that. Even at that time, there was still a bit of that sentiment at that time, right? And so it's just really interesting to me how that sentiment is even more bold now. Of we're giving more than we get, but I'm like, proportionately, I don't know how much, how realistic that actually is.
Yeah,
but.
Well, I mean, I've heard it more in line of I'll verbatim use what Trump says. It's the car manufacturing. Well, it has to do with globalism and American companies not manufacturing in the US mostly, right?
Yeah.
So what I do know is that there's a lot of American defense contractors based in Canada. And obviously that's
Lockheed's up here.
Great benefit.
Lockheed's in Calgary.
Yeah, there you go. So I mean, it's here.
Which would make an invasion interesting, but
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, like hey, bomb your own headquarters in there. I guess like.
I mean, there's been no movement from them at all, so that should tell you everything you need to know. But in the car manufacturing, I don't know how to properly evaluate it. Right, I guess the best you can get is maybe the trade surpluses, but even then it's rough because of the currency exchanges. And like you said, there's already been attempts to balance it out under a Democratic president. So I would specifically, sorry.
Oh, just like on the note of like trade surplus.
Yeah.
That is so confusing to me as a pain point from a U.S. perspective. Of how what about having a trade surplus is painful?
Well,
like what about that is appears unfair, or like
the argument is that it drives up prices for Americans technically, because our products are not getting sold, so therefore we have less jobs. It goes again with globalism, right? Our products aren't getting sold. Most of American products are fucking digital anyway, but
I wonder like how much the numbers actually back that up though, because like to me that feels like something that feels like a vibe versus like the actuality of what that trade surplus is very specific products that are sold en masse from very specific manufacturers, right? Like it's not like it's not, the products aren't being bought, like it's just like there's just so happens to be a lot of lumber made in this one spot that's going over, and then that adds to the pot. That's not like that's not unfair pricing. That's not like not market pricing. That's like there's no actual correlation to that or causation. Like there's no correlation to that or causation.
The problem,
right? So
from an American perspective, is that when all of it's pulled together, which is how it works, that's globalism. All the products are mass manufactured and then they're pulled together. Is it's not made here in the U.S., so we don't get the benefit of the job, having the jobs. And then B, a lot of the prices that are determined, they're determined by currency. So if the U.S. dollar is valued quite high, then we have to pay more.
Which it is to the Canadian dollar and has been for the majority of the time, right? With the trade surplus.
Right.
Needs for a lot more actual physical resources for the dollar being spent.
On top of it, global companies have just figured out that Americans will pay more in general, so that's kind of like a blackmail operation against us. The tariffs are not actually against the countries.
Sure.
It's labeled that way as being against the countries. It's really not. It's actually
it's the cost of the consumer.
Okay. Well, it's actually meant to punish the companies, manufacturing with outside the U.S. Even if that means a consumer in the U.S. would pay more, the goal is to get them to stop paying for it until they move the job back. That's the whole idea behind, the tariffs and the trade surpluses. Obviously, trade surpluses are kind of normal, but the goal is to try and level it out by getting the money to come back. Whether or not you think it's succeeding in that, again, personally, I do, but I know a lot of Americans and outsiders were like, no, it's not. So, it's whatever. It's politics. That's politics for you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think yes, it does encourage. It's an isolationist policy. Yes, it's going to encourage companies to build within. But that's not necessarily I get yes, it's going to do that, right? The question is that holistically a good thing? When the whole complex system is put together, is that actually a good thing? Is the real question, and that's kind of ultimately what it comes down to. That is the political difference of, do you believe this is worth it or not?
Yes. My main argument is the simple fact that we're entering the age of automation. And from a globalist perspective, if they can automate within another country and then sell to Americans at a very high rate, it's very beneficial for them.
Yeah.
And we want to move factories here, even if they're automated, so that way we can bring the prices, make it a little cheaper for Americans. I mean, that again, guys, that's the overall, that's the idea. I do want to move it to the military perspective, and there was that leaked chat between JD Vance. It was all the top Trump administration over back when they were handling the Houthis. And the Houthis had blocked off trade to Europe. It was something like 90% of European trade ran through a corridor that the Houthis had pretty much held hostage. It basically forcing the cargo ships to move around the Horn of Africa and driving up prices. Well, there was a lot of posturing by European nations. They moved some boats over there. They didn't actually do anything about it. The American military stepped in, forced the Houthis to stop bombing everyone except Israel's boats. And that obviously has direct effect on their prices. So it's a lot of those little things, too, at the same time, where it's the global police argument.
Yeah. Are you referring to the Red Sea crisis?
Yeah. Well, Red Sea is a little further north. I'm talking about the down at the southern tip.
Okay.
I forget. Fuck.
Yeah, commercial vessels. Yeah, because from the Red Sea crisis, that's when a lot of commercial vessels stuff was being rerouted around Africa because it couldn't go through the Red Sea. Hence the name. Which is, it's interesting that you bring that up, because that kind of comes back to the Israel conversation, because the Houthis made the blockade in protest of the proxy war. So it's just, I'm like, oh, okay, that kind of comes full circle.
They were indiscriminately bombing all ships just because they associate America with Israel, which, again, rightfully so, wrongfully so, whatever. You guys can fucking decide amongst yourselves. But European boats were getting bombed at the same time, and Europe didn't really do anything about it, and America did. And it's a lot of those little events. I mean, even the invasion of Venezuela, right or wrong, brought down oil prices. It's such a tough politics. It's so fucking annoying with it. It's a 50-50. Again, flooding the oil market to try and make oil cheaper is something America likes to do, and whether or not you agree with their methods, it does benefit, everybody except the countries there. They get
I don't know if it does. The world pushed back on that. And this is just kind of coming from the sustainable systems And when I say sustainable systems, I'm not talking about renewables. When I say sustainable systems, I mean systems that can exist as they are ad infinitum, right? A sustainable system is one that can last forever, right? And like you said, flooding the market, and you say, oh, it's a good thing that people can now afford the oil prices at where they are, just reinforces adherence and reliance on that thing, which ultimately is unsustainable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're not wrong. The U.S. does this really interesting thing where it loves to get the rest of the world on the past generation of resource while it moves on to the next one. It's one of the most interesting things I've ever seen.
Yeah. They're kind of doing the opposite at this point, though, because as you China making all the different types of EVs, right? They're kind of doing the opposite, where Trump has been very anti-wind, very anti-solar, very anti any renewable. Really,
they're very pro-nuclear, and China very pro-coal. So it's again, EVs. The power's got to come from somewhere.
Using a lot of coal. I don't know if they're pro coal. I don't know if their investment would really indicate that they're pro coal. They're reliant on it because they don't have any other option. But
right.
Yes. Yeah. Using something out of necessity versus being an advocate for a thing, I think, are two very different things. Like, again, my trip up when I was up in the Yukon, they were very reliant on diesel, but not a single advocate for diesel. They all fucking hated it because it was expensive. It cost a lot to bring out there. And as the second they got a single wind turbine out there that replaced the diesel generator for a couple of communities, people would lament on how they heard birds for the first time because diesel generators weren't running. There's a difference between relying on something out of necessity because it's the only available option, because it's the one thing that investment has gone into, versus being an advocate for a thing, right? So that's what I'm saying with oil prices being low. Oh, that's a good thing. Maybe it actually isn't a good thing if it's reinforcing and digging a hole deeper into a more intense reliance on that fuel and utility, right?
Yeah.
Or even putting more pressure to hold on to a country that it shouldn't be holding on to because it doesn't have jurisdiction over that country.
I think both are happening, and the U.S. is particularly good at this, where it's we can drive down oil prices and transition to a different energy source. It's a thing that we've done successfully, I think, twice now, and this is probably the third time.
Yeah.
So I don't remember where I was going with this. Something about globalism, pricing, driving down prices. I don't remember.
New World Order.
New World Order.
Yeah.
No such thing.
What is?
Do you have any last thoughts there, Brayden? I feel like Dougie got kind of sucked into it. Something. Do you have any last thoughts on what we were talking about? I'd love to hear your input.
I don't know. I think we just need to send Israel more money. That's all.
That's one way to do it.
All right.
Let's send Israel more money and let's invade Greenland. Fuck yeah, let's do it. AC-130s in the air. Let's get going. Freebird flying in the background.
Well,
we'll see what happens.
we will see what happens. The future is always an interesting thing to prospect about. It's been fun doing it with you, and thank you for your insights on Canada and the policies. I learned a lot personally.
100%.
So just once again, thank you for coming on. You articulate very well. Obviously,
thank you.
You're not
the smartest guest we've had on
major.
so far.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you.
Calm down. We've had CEOs.
Yeah, CEOs. Yeah, the money-hungry people. Yeah, it's a great. Yeah, blaze them more, why don't you?
Either way,
I'm gonna call it as it is.
That's very kind of you
for
to say.
Coming on. It was a very great experience.
Thank you.
100%.
Lost you there. Yeah, I had a great time. Chatting with you guys. Thanks so much for having me on. It was a lot of fun. I as well. I also learned a lot from y'all in terms of American perspective and seeing where you guys are at. And it's honestly, I love chatting with you guys. So,
do you want to advertise your socials a little bit, or are you good?
I'm not much of a socials guy, honestly. Like I said, I'm at University of Calgary. I guess I'm the president of CISAS, Calgary Indigenous Students STEAM Association. It's a student organization at the University of Calgary that supports Indigenous students to try and establish more equity within the industry. So if anybody's watching that has any interest in supporting something like that, more than happy, reach out. You can find us via the University of Calgary website and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.